Welcome, welcome everyone to tvosj.org, the voice of San Joaquin, right here off the Miracle Mile in Stockton, California. It is now time for Doug Vigil Show.
Hello, thank you, Betty, for
You're welcome.
helping with the board. I'd like to thank everyone for watching and joining us about this amazing topic. I always believe that art is an expression, whether it's visual or listening, but also writing as well. So we have a group of gentlemen that are author and promoter of trying to educate people to get developed to write. And they have some of the people that are author and wrote book too. And I'm going to introduce themselves and then what they do and everything else. Okay, I hope you enjoy watching. Okay, go ahead. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Robert Reinarts. I'm relatively late in my life coming to the world of writing and literacy. When I was young, I was a mathematician, worked in military aerospace for a lot of years, and I was well into my 60s when I accidentally fell into the world of writing prose and then a little bit of poetry. As I was beginning, I could not find here in Stockton any resources that were helpful to me. So we started a little writing group. We met at the Stockton Main Library. And we were meeting a couple of times a month then. We grew a little bit and gathered some members, two of which are here today. The Heritage Writers now is about 13 years old from that date when we began. And Dr. Jose Cantu and Mr. Jim Fox were both early participants in this program and really brought a lot of the substance and vitality that this program has to their efforts. We meet monthly at the Hagen Museum, and it's been a good place for us. It's an inspirational place. We've had the honor of representing them 6 or 8 times over the past few years in supporting some of their special exhibits. We've written original poems and prose and presented them in public events in support of those exhibits, and we had a good time. It was fun for us, and it was good for the museum. We've, over the years, in addition to working on the development of good prose and poetry, one of the primary goals of the group is to provide some platforms through which our many talented writers and poets and oral storytellers can present their work to the general public. We operated for about 6 years on Comcast Public Television. We've given readings at retirement homes as well as at the museum. And now we're pleased to participate on radio and hope that we could continue. People who would like to join our group, you're welcome. Both novice and professional writers. Most of our people are published, but not all. And we'd be glad to have you.
Wonderful. So how long did you say it was in this particular organization that you promoted been existent?
13 years.
13 years. Well, great. So as far as I'm concerned, do you have, when you have an exhibit, do you apply to the community with the youth? Are there any different level of ages and things like that to attract?
We really haven't worked at that in the past. Our growth has been more or less just accidental. People stumble across us and they join us, and we have a roster that's maybe as many as 40 people who over the years have participated at one time or another. We have a core group of about 6 or 8 that seems to be able to withstand the evolution process.
I think it's very encouraging to have somebody like this to have upon which nobody know about, but also have some kind of scholarship or an award for best writing in youth, colleges, or the general public, as far as concerned. So I just think that's a need, because a lot of people do not write. Everybody knows how to print nowadays. You have to print your name, but they don't know how to cursive when writing, when it comes to that. So that's something that we need to start re-educating them, the cursive writing and poet and poem. To me, it's very artistic for people to have. So I really appreciate you coming about, because I wasn't aware of it. So I'm glad these things are coming out. So now, do you have something to add?
Well, thank you. Yes, I perhaps might.
State your name and
I'm Jose Cantu. I'm Jose Cantu. I don't need a right to compete. I know that there's a lot of trend toward that end. That is writing for awards, recognition, honors, etc. I don't write for that purpose.
Okay.
I write because I have something to say, and I think that's the bottom line. Do you have something to say? I write from a lot of times from my own personal experience. As a boy, 10,000 years ago, I worked with my parents as a migrant worker.
Okay.
I did, and in fact, some of my experiences are herein shared. One of these that I'd like to share was the experience I remember as a boy riding on the back of a flatbed truck. And as the truck was ferrying us back and forth from field to field, the powdered dust of the wheels coming back, just hitting the faces of the people.
Wow.
And the people I remember were those ladies, the mothers, the aunts, the grandmothers, the cousins that were sitting by the back of the pickup along with me, and their faces getting powdered with dust. I wrote a poem in that regard. I call it Our Flowers of the Field.
Okay.
Sitting by the flimsy tailgate of the canvas-covered flatbed, they watched their world slip slowly away. The grinding roar of the real balding wheels and the white powdery dust off the crust of the dry gravel bed road touched their faces, even as the dirt beneath their dust-covered feet fashioned the lives of their daily defeat. Field upon field and row upon row held them in sway as the cursed truck made its labored way to their assigned place of work at the beginning of day. Before them lay the miles and miles of green, beets and weeds, awaiting the gentle stroke of their roughened hands as their part of the arduous work. By some strange grit, deep in their silent souls, with their sole desire to please their families and mates, despite their difficult fate. Bedecked in frayed cotton sack blouses, weather-worn jeans, and worn-out work shoes, the promise of their saddened eyes and hope in their bittersweet smiles seemed to wash away the bleakness of our daily fray. The battle, the road dust, the sun-baked rust, and somehow, through prayerful sway, they brought an illusion of undying hope to our darkest, depressing day. They were our flowers of the field, the sunshine yellow of the wild summer rose, the indigo sea of bluebonnets in full sheen. They were the promise of first petals in fresh bloom. How they managed to nourish their pretense of joyous allure in the course of their constantly wearisome chore was a testament to who they were and who they meant themselves to be beneath the grave facade of deep ignominy. They were our madres, tias, abuelas, hermanas, primas, amigas, amadas. They were our lilies of the field. They were the flowers on 1,000 miles of cactus beyond the merciless sand of our survival. They were the ones who fought to defend husbands, children, and friends, who brought hope and cheer to the sunburnt valleys of our scorching tears. Our flowers of the field. Long before there was a voice in defense of the migrant's chore, long before there was a fighter for the causa de la raza, long before there was a voter vigilante enlisting taco voters at our taco door, There were mothers, aunts, grandmothers, sisters, cousins, and other ladies of the field who taught us to believe that we were real. We were men of promise like the rest, that we too could hold our heads high, and that victory would one day be our cry. Long before, when they rose at 4, made frijoles for breakfast and tortillas for lunch. Long before, when they readied their children for the day-long chore. Long before, when the sun beat down on them like a sentence for their penance, they whispered in our ears, allaying our fears with the hope that we too would one day soon find our rightful place in the valley of the sun. Long before, long before, long before.
Wow. That's really very, I don't know how you can interpret it, but I interpret it the way that the life
Life makes an impression, particularly in the mind of a small 5-year-old boy. It makes impression. Just because they're young doesn't mean they don't grasp, they don't understand, they don't see and grasp the world for what it is. I see we have a young man coming in the door now.
All right, come on, Josh, come over here.
Hi there.
This is Josh. He's an artist, community. He's a musician as well as a poet, and he got some stories behind it. I was really impressed. You know how he started writing, and Josh, go give your testimony on how did you start writing your poet? You know, as far as to get the
Do you
people.
want to share the mic?
Yeah, share the mic. Go ahead. Oop, I get
Sorry
it.
about that. Hi there. So my name's Josh. Nice to meet you guys. How long have you guys been writing?
Hour and a half.
An hour and a half. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, our group's been around 13 years, but most of us were
nice.
writing before
Longer
that.
than you've been on this earth.
So I believe I've been writing for about 10 to 15 years.
Mhm.
I started when I was in 5th grade. I'm 21 going on 22, and I started. I had a girl I liked in middle school. She liked poetry, so I figured, being like in 5th grade, if I impressed her writing a poem, she would like me. And then I kind of just took after that, and I just started writing a lot of like love poems in the beginning, and then throughout my high school I went through my kind of like rebellious stage, and so I wrote a lot about like political stuff and more of like trying to find my voice. But since then I write poetry, I write songs, I'm more of a like an Edgar Allan Poe type. I really like mixing and matching when it comes to that, but I brought some stuff if you don't mind me reading.
Definitely, go ahead, Josh. Because it really impressed me how a person like that go through going from life experience and putting it in word. That's really, you could get to understand where he's coming from.
That's true. So like, other than like doing poetry, I manage 2 bands in Stockton. I do a lot with the music community. I have a show here every Thursday nights, and it's called the Artist Hour, and I interview local musicians and artists weekly. I'm a dad. I have a 2-year-old son. I work 2 part-time jobs. So I'm constantly working on my art and stuff, and I figured doing all this at an early age now would be great, because if I fall or fell, I have time to bounce back, rather than trying to do it maybe like 30, maybe 20, 30, 20, 30s, because I figured if I'm at a young age, I can I have all the motivation now.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been published 3 times by Delta College. That's the college I went to after high school. But my most recent one is called I'm Coming Home, and that was in Artifact Nouveau. Have you ever heard
Yes.
of it? Yeah. Yeah, they're really cool. But this got published in this spring semester 2018-2019. But it's called I'm Coming Home, and it's been a long time, but Mama, I'm coming home. It's been a long while, but this journey has led me through my trials and tribulations. I'm not the same man. This lifestyle takes more than it gives. The more it feeds, the less I believe that I will make it out alive, and when I don't acknowledge the beast, the devil comes out of hiding and takes my soul. Morning becomes night and my body becomes the feast. What if I can't become the man you want? I'm not a troubled teen like I used to be. The alcohol killed my suicidal thoughts, and the moonlight walk stopped my drinking addiction. It seems at the age of 2, I would have had a prediction of what my life would have turned into if I stayed in the arms of a drug-addicted, self-inflicted mother. That may have been a little harsh, for you have turned into my #1 fan. It's been a long time, but Mama, I'm coming home. It's been a long while, but this journey has led me through my trials and tribulations. I wake up in the morning and my back aches. I pop a pill or two to ease the pain. I'll do whatever it takes. My phone rings and they need me again. I'm always on the road as the devil sings. I travel a state or two, passing by so many faces. It's all a blur with all these places, but when I'm up on that stage, it seems like I was meant to be. Time to pack my bags and I'm on the road again. It's been a long time, but Mama, I'm coming home. It's been a long while, but this journey has led me through my trials and tribulations. So that kind of sums up the past 2 years I've been doing music. It seems like when I started my band in 2017, it was kind of kind of for fun, and then the band started to get a little bigger. More responsibilities came with that, and I started taking on more things. So it's kind of like a self-reflection of how, being in the band and doing the stuff I do is cool, but over the years it takes a lot. It seems like I never get a day off. It seems like I'm always needed for something, and so that's basically what it's about. And with Artifact Nouveau, you submit some of your stuff, and the last time I got published was in 2017. So I've been submitting some of my stuff for 2 years, and I thought were good, but none of them got accepted until last year. So.
Well, did it ever have happened? You guys, your poet ever get rejected by somebody like that in an article in a magazine?
You mentioned the first poem you wrote, or you're so inspired. You brought back memories. I remember the kids in the 8th grade were all yak, and the teacher was just frustrated. She said, "That's it." Slammed her hand on the table. Said, "Here's an assignment for you. You've got to write something about yakking for tomorrow." Oh, I completely forgot about it. I'm sitting the next day in library. The next class was my English class. Everybody was talking about what they'd written. I thought, oh my God, I forgot. So immediately I went and researched what a yak was. So I wrote, "This is what a yak is." And then I figured, well, I'll finish with a quatrain. "So if it makes you troubled and makes you feel despair, don't give us homework double, just sit and pull your hair." And she loved it. She read it before every class she had, but that got me started. But words are fun. Words are inspiring.
They
Words
are.
are great, and you got to fall in love with them if you want to write.
That's true.
That young man enjoyed your topic.
I've learned different types of poems, and I like more of free verse, to be honest.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
And when I go in to write, like, some pieces take me 5 minutes, some pieces take me 10. Some pieces
Some will
I
take you
worked
5
on,
years.
yeah. Some pieces I've worked on that's taken me 3 months, and I'll scrap them, rewrite them.
That's right, exactly.
But I write so much. Like, I have books and books and notebooks, and just, I'll write something 2 years ago and then forget about it, and then come again and just turn it into something new, And writing's also my passion too. I feel like God gave me this talent for a reason.
And I was,
Very good,
I
very
was
good.
just talking to Josh, because we want to put an artist, poet hour, because this guy is very multiple talent, and he talked about one subject for his music, another one for his writing. I think that would help develop the community, what he's coming from, because people can understand, and you can understand what the writer and what the idea is coming from it. And that's why I just kind of want to have Josh to get the idea of what your organization is based on, a heritage writing community, and which is kind of surprising that I heard a couple of his writing as well, really deep, really impactful. So, and that's what it got me started.
What is Heritage Writers Community? I did a little research before this, but I'm not, this is my first time hearing about it.
Well, if you, rather than repeat a long-winded kind of introduction, if you listen to this program,
Yeah.
you'll get the whole background story.
So let me ask you. Why don't you get your turn?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to.
This is Jim
Jim
Fox,
Fox.
yeah. And I've written a lot of short stories. Most of them are what you would call, they're true, but it's creative nonfiction because
Okay.
you have the story in your head, you don't remember all the details. And writing builds your vocabulary. I'd like to point that out.
That's
and
true.
let's look to the word segue, because there was a segue there a minute ago into the Heritage Writers Community. You mentioned liking Poe's work. That made me change the story I was going to read. This story actually began as a gift for my father's 75th birthday. And I took a chance. I didn't know how the family thought about my writing because I started very late. And I thought I would just take a chance, and I read it at his 75th birthday. We lost him 3 years later. So I'm so glad I took that time to write it down. Everybody enjoyed it. I was asked to read it again as part of his eulogy at his funeral. And then people said, you need to send that in and get it published. And I'd had other small stories published here and there. So I added, the whole first page is a frontispiece that I added to kind of explain the story to people who weren't there at the birthday party or at his funeral. And there's a segue here too, because you like Poe. Poe will show up in here. Anyway, I entitled this The Drive-In Banshees, and it was later published by the Front Porch Periodical and then reprinted by Nostalgia Magazine. The Drive-In Banshees. The drive-in movie theater was gone. Now standing in its place was a 3-story shopping mall. From atop the highway off-ramp, I could see that mall in my hometown one Saturday when I was stuck once again in traffic gridlock on my way to visit Mom at the old homestead. My thoughts turned to that missing theater, to where Dad would often take us on a hot summer night. My dad is gone now, and basically so is the town where our family grew up. Oh, it's still on the map, but it's not my dad's town. It's not even my town anymore. The orchard that used to be across the street from our house is now a subdivision, 7 miles inside the city limits. And there are other changes too, such as that shopping mall where the drive-in movie theater used to be. Overlooking that dramatic change, I thought back to that time of innocence in our recent history when so many soldiers returned from war to build the peacetime prosperity that my generation enjoyed. So many, like my dad, had put away the sabers of war to quietly take on those mundane duties required of the generation that populated the growing suburbs of the late 50s and 60s. For many of these men and women, planning missions was replaced with household budgeting. And the only operational logistics they now faced were the competing demands on their time by Little League, Scouts, swim meets, and neighborhood barbecues, all of the typical demands of raising children. This was a daunting task for so many whose own childhood had been stolen by the Great Depression and then the war years. But with the courage born of their baptism by war, that generation set out to conquer these new demands with hard work and an undying faith in the future, and they were heroes all. My dad had flown a Corsair providing ground support in the Korean War and had medals with ribbons in his sock drawer, so we kids figured Dad was a hero. But our neighbors knew Dad was a hero whenever the first warm Saturday night rolled around after school was out for the summer. Dad would hose off the station wagon, wash the windshield, fold down the back seat, load in some sleeping bags, and round up us banshees for the trek to the horror show at the drive-in movie. Banshees, those wailing harbingers of doom, was the nickname our Irish grandmother had given us kids. Just perhaps it was quite fitting. Ben and Betty Jean have 7 kids, the neighbors marveled. All boys, and Ben's going to make the drive-in run tonight. The drive-in movie routine never varied. Mom would get out the stovetop popcorn popper and draft one of the taller boys to keep shaking the handle until a huge aluminum ice bucket would be brimming over with popped corn. Dad used to look at that bucket, wink at Mom, and then he'd sigh. I once heard him tell a visiting friend that back when there were dinner parties and Saturday night card games, that bucket used to chill martini shakers, or something called French 75s. Then Dad had given that sigh and said, of course, that had been when there were only 2 or 3 kids in the family. But now The ice bucket was reserved for the summertime popcorn ritual. Once the bucket was full, we'd pile into the station wagon and Dad would back it down the driveway. I used to think Mom wished she could come too, because she'd stand on the front porch, a brave smile on her face as the tears welled up in her eyes. Years later, I would recognize those same teary-eyed smiles on my wife's face whenever I volunteered to take our children away on some just dad and kids outing. Our station wagon didn't have air conditioning, so we'd roar off with the windows cranked down, the road noise drowning out the bickering for seating positions. The next stop was the root beer stand, the one with the big root beer mug rotating on the roof. Dad always insisted that the root beer was fresh brewed in that mug, but even the youngest of us recognized it was just a painted sheet metal tank with a stovepipe handle. There we'd buy one of those big family-sized jugs of root beer, then we were off on the final run, trying to get to the drive-in before sundown so we could play on the swing set and giant slide up near the screen until the show started or the bullies and mosquitoes ran us off. One summer night, the newspaper noted that Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher was playing. Dad was an ex-Marine. He wouldn't be afraid, so we talked him into making the drive-in trek. The night was sweltering. Heat radiated from the gravel hillocks of the drive-in. Most of us got out of the car to sit on the front bumper. We couldn't really hear the window speakers, so the sound coming from the bullhorns below the movie screen added an eerie echo to the show. As we huddled together on the bumper, the coffin lid up on the screen began to shudder and strain against the clinking chains wrapped around it. Our youngest brother had stayed in the car on the sleeping bag spread across the folded-down back seat, but now he scrambled forward into Dad's lap for safety. The coffin lid creaked, then slowly lifted an inch. Suddenly, bloody fingers clawed through that opening. On the bumper, we gasped and huddled closer, and in the car, our youngest brother pushed away from the steering wheel in fright. Now, when someone sits on a car bumper, watching a horror movie, they're only inches away from a horn that is activated by someone pushing the steering wheel hub. Our feet didn't wait to find the source of that sudden blaring sound. They just started running. In my hometown, the debate lingered long over who had been the most frightened, the boys sitting on the bumper or the folks in the front rows of cars up front who were first startled by some idiot honking and then once more by that flock of screaming banshees running past. I was in my mid-20s before I realized, Dad honked that horn.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's like I say, that grew out of a story that I read, and then I added the front couple paragraphs, and was later published and then picked up again by Nostalgia, so magazine.
So when you publish, I'm sorry.
I wanted to add that in addition to being a writer, Jim has been the producer of a number of chapbooks that we've published. They're a lot like that. And he's borne the burden of being the editor-in-chief and organizer and composer and putting them together, and they came out really beautiful. We've sold most of them at the Hagen Museum bookstore. But that's been another second job of his.
Yeah.
He's
No,
done
It was
a
blood,
great
sweat,
job.
and tears,
Great
Josh, and it wasn't the band.
No, I know for sure. I started, in my art career, I started writing first, and then I kind of stopped writing poetry and started writing more songs, because the band took more, and I shifted my focus more on that. But I still write every day, and I feel like I want to start getting more published more, because I know I've got some good pieces, and
I'd like to read something that I just wrote about a week ago.
Sure.
It's a salute to my wife, Barbara. And the occasion of this was her 85th birthday. And she's not in good health. She has many, many physical problems and so on. And yet she's a fine, fine, tough woman. And I wrote this kind of like an ode, but it isn't really the formal ode style, but I call it a salute to Barbara. Hail, fine woman of my life. You bring such joy to my life days. We shall salute you today, as we should every life day. I salute your will to live and struggle with a weak body that will not let you be free to do what you see important to bring great joy to our life.
Wow, that's
It's
beautiful.
nice. Yeah, it is.
Thank
How
you.
long have you been with? How long have you guys been together?
Well, essentially, it's the genesis of the Heritage Writers community, so it'd make it 13 years. We just met by accident of walking into the same room together.
Nice. How is it? How is it to be published? How long did it take you to get to where you are right now? And
Well,
for any of you guys.
I didn't start writing until my 60s, so it's been just, 20 some odd years maybe at most. And I never had an interest in writing, never thought about it as something I wanted to do. I was a mathematician and worked in military aerospace. I'd written research papers and technical reports, things like that, but never fiction. And I happened into it by accident. I was on a consulting gig down in Fresno, and looking for something to do on evenings because I was a little too far to commute every day, so I took a small apartment down there and signed up for a writing class at the local junior college, I think it was, or it could have been a city college. And the teacher liked what I was doing and gave me a little encouragement, and so I started. And my only formal training that I had, the first one was I went to the Maui Writers Conference and spent a week in workshops with some truly outstanding professional writers, the kinds who put out the New York Times bestseller list.
Okay.
And that was quite a motivation, and that was the beginning of my writing
Nice.
career.
What about you?
I too did not really start seriously until I retired, and I was 60. I had written a number of things and compiled a number of things leading up to that point, and then I became more serious about it. Bought me a computer, bought me a keyboard, I started typing away, and joined a writers group. Jim was a member of that writers group, Lodi Writers Community, I think it was called.
Nice.
Yeah, and I met Jim there, and there was a challenge that really was thrown at me, so I figured, okay, I'll write. And as it turned out, I was able to finish a novel that I called The Dead-Eye Deuce, about a young man growing up kind of like I did, gets a scholarship to Berkeley in California from Texas, and he becomes a bowler on the college bowling team, etc. And then I figured, and then I started writing again. I had written a number of Christmas poems, and I read one of them, the very first one I had written when my daughter was in fact in the first grade. And again, the challenge was thrown at me. Well, you've written that, write more. Before I knew it, I'm writing a series of Christmas poems, which I published under the title of A Chorus of Christmas Carols. And then I figured, okay, what am I going to do with my prose? And I went back and figured I'll write a sequel. So that came out, a sequel to the first novel. I called it Full Circle, where the young man becomes a school teacher in Stockton after having competed on a professional bowling tour. I continued writing, and I wanted to change my entire genre. And as it turned out, I wanted to write a detective novel.
Okay.
I started writing and I figured, yeah, but this is so trite. Everybody does that. I want it to be a twist. So it turns out the detective himself turns out to be worse than the killer he's chasing.
Oh.
And he turns out to be Adolf Hitler's illegitimate son. And that's how it turns out. Mind you, I don't know that Hitler ever had a son, but he did in my novel.
Okay.
He did in my novel. And I had that published under the title of The Legacy, A Heritage of Hate. Since then, I've written a host of other writings, poetry. I have at least 4 manuscripts. I've really done nothing with them other than share them publicly wherever I've had a chance to do so. But I love writing. Today, most of my writing deals with Scripture. I
Okay.
happen to be the teacher of our senior adult Bible class in
Okay.
our church. And
Which church?
Berea Baptist Church.
Okay.
Just in Murrata, just in the east section of Stockton. And it takes me 20 hours to complete one lesson. It's all research, right. That's what has basically tied up my writing time today. But I enjoy writing.
See, with me, I've written a lot of pieces. Problem with me is like it's kind of hard trying to get that published. You know.
Oh, yeah.
I've written. There's this novel I wrote. It's called The Psycho Killer Tells and Other Poems, and it's about like this psychopath. It talks about how he's like he kills a lot of different people, but the way it's different is it's poems. So it's poems, but it tells a whole story. So it's like a collection of like 25 poems, but it has one major theme to it. You know, I could do chapter by chapter, but I felt like that was kind of like, you know, I wanted to do something different, you know, challenge myself. So I broke it down into 25 different poems, and
Good for you.
and
Good for you.
I plan on writing a prequel, sequel, and a spin-off. I want it to be a 4-part.
Yeah.
The hard part is trying to find a publisher to take a look at that stuff.
That's the
you know.
hard part.
Yeah, that
It
is.
really is. Regrettably, today, the perception generally of poetry is that it's all autobiographical.
Yeah.
I fight against that. I
love-
refuse to
yeah,
write
I love-
autobiography. I write stories told in
See,
poetry form.
and that's the
you
way
can't
I
throw
do
a
it
stone at
too.
me saying I write about me. No, I write about my experiences, but also about others in poem form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
But you know what? I just hearing Josh and hearing you guys really need to step up the awareness that you guys do. You know, because having events. I never knew that Hagenberg provided this particular event until now. But definitely need to reactivate so people could go there and listen to your poem and had an exhibit and understanding where you're coming from, just for that particular population in that particular in Stockton, and that's something that I would like to have you back again, because it's not going to have enough time within 45 minutes to deal with a lot of sharing poems, sharing poetry, and all that stuff. People would like to listen more often. I would like to have Josh to come back and work with me with this particular plan. You know what I mean? At the regular ongoing thing. As far as that concerned, knowing that people are interested. Like, I know the youth. I think somebody at the coffee shop, they do poet.
Yeah, they do a lot of open mics.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
correct.
And it's doing open mics is a little different than just writing, because
Okay.
that's spoken word,
Okay.
and I love spoken word, but it's spoken word's cool, but to be able to go up and do spoken word is
A little different, right?
yeah.
Yes.
Do you have you ever guys done spoken word?
We've done a few times. Most of our chapbooks start with a preface that says the written word.
Okay.
But and we've interestingly enough, the Drive-In Banshees, I actually included that when we try to match some of our work to an exhibit that's coming up or is
Okay.
there at the time, and that fit right in with Driven to Drive, and it was about Stockton's car culture. And while this was many, many years earlier, it still tied in because it was about a trip in an automobile out to a drive-in. But that's the beauty of what we've done at the Hagen over the years, is by when we see an exhibit, some of us have old work that'll fit right in, but we're always inspired also to come up with new work. We go in a direction we maybe never thought we were going to go. I did a very, very dark poem when we were doing a series on they had the war posters from Spanish-American War, First World War, Second World War, the recruiting posters. And that brought a very dark poem out of me from an immigrant that I had met who'd left Germany. He was a child there and saw all of that around him. The world was crazy. This kid knew it, and he came to America, but he still talked of that.
Am I able to read one more?
Go ahead.
This one's called Splat. I got this published in 2017. I wrote it I think in 2016, but I didn't really fully get it published by Delta College, so 2017. But it's called Splat, and it's I'm the color black. Obviously, she's the color white because I see no darkness between her innocent eyes. She walks as if I paint, soft strokes like I'm creating an original piece. Her lips curve the U shape of unconditional love that I have for her. Excuse me, I'm a genius, but I see no acknowledgement. It's okay, don't stress. Don't worry, once this art drops and splats, I will have them breathtaking cheering my name on that stage. It's beautiful the way I write, isn't it? I'm original like the punchline bites. Take it off, your clothes, your mask of worries. I promise you an extraordinary night with me. Years gone by and I still have the taste of our first kiss at the top of my tongue. Let me sketch a brief illustration of I and you. I will outline every single detail that I remember touching with blind eyes. No need for glasses. I never regretted an opportunity that passes to show you how much I shine. So be strong for me. You want an escape, a way out of your pain. Just read my art with every little piece of my heart poured out and you will feel incomplete no more. I see us, all four, which includes my fears and your insecurities. We're all sitting around a fire burning a blaze of freedom. Now watch me splash flames on my empty canvas to show you how real it is. It's a kick in the butt to regain the will to love before our memories vanish. All these colors surround me, yet I still see black stuck on me. I didn't ask for this, but heaven sent the color white to complete my artwork, like yin yang. Ask me what I think about the color spectrum, and I will answer with a question. Do you see black and white within the room of color? All I see is splat on my white piece of paper. And that I wrote that. That was a 3-part
That's good.
series.
That's good.
And Delta College published 2 of the 3. I tried to get my 3rd one, but I kept resubmitting it, changed it. But the first one got published in the summer of 2017, and then this one got published in the fall semester. And
Johnny, is that the one that you? What was the one that you were talking about the first time you came about women, the girl?
it was this one. It was
that
that was part 1.
That was part 1, and that was the one that's been published the first time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so far I've gotten 3 publications when it comes to poetry. I wrote for the Delta Collegian. When I was going to college, I really wanted to get into journalism, so I took some classes in the mass communication. I wrote for the newspaper for a bit. I got like 4 stories published. One of them was a sports story, and then 3 were political opinion pieces. Then I had my son, and dropped out of college, took on 2 jobs, started my band, got a lot in the music community, realized I didn't really want to do journalism. I wanted to get into more music, so I studied sound and doing all of that. And then I picked up a show here, so I basically did a full 360, and now I'm back into journalism because this is basically what it is, So now I want to get more into radio and television.
Oh, well, okay. Well, let me ask you this question: as far as what as you as a person, a youth, what motivates you? As far as I know you have your music. I know you're a band manager, but what did it take for you to write? Because you're a single dad, or you becoming deal with life with being a foster. What triggered you from making that poem that you do?
So if you go back to my roots, I am a foster child. I was adopted when I was 5. My birth parents were basically, drug addicted parents, and so I was taken away at age 2, thrown in foster care until I was adopted at 5. I moved about 10 different homes. I lived in Tracy, Stockton, Modesto, Manteca, Galt. So with that caused a lot of trauma, and I had a lot of behavior issues in school growing up. But I think that's kind of what my roots are. I think that's kind of why I write the way I write, because just something about writing about my pain makes me feel better, and if I can write something that people can relate to, it's even better. I don't write about this stuff because it's like, I don't really like to show off that much, but you know, I write what comes on my mind, whether that's something love or that's something dark. Like Splat is all about how I feel like sometimes I'm not good enough, but I found somebody who kind of was my half, you know. While the other one was about I'm Coming Home, was about how even though sometimes I am home, I feel like I'm always on the road. I feel like I never have time for things. So it's, you know, I try not to write about the same things, but with that and then being a father and, you know, doing a lot of art, it motivates me to endeavor into new things, you know.
Sure.
I like trying new things.
Perfect. You know, right now, before we're almost at the end of our show at the moment, so I'm gonna give you the opportunity to each person to say what you want to talk about, last minute to contact you, or is there going to be any event coming up at Hagen Museum and whatever. So I'm giving each one a chance to, before we get off, let's go from this angle and to wrap.
Like, where can we find your work at?
Well, my work's still available through Amazon Books. There's it's called Joy and Inspiration by Kiwi Press, and my Polka Dots and Sunshine Teardrops, which was originally in Inspiration magazine. It's the first time they ran a 2-page short story, and it was well received. So that's where you can find it. As for the Hagen, I always wait for Robert, as I think Jose does the same thing, to nail down one of the exhibits that we'll try to match some of our work to.
Pretty much the same. Amazon, GF Cantu, and I refer my time to Brother Art.
Okay.
You're not good at advertising yourself, are you?
It's practice, you know.
We meet, the Heritage Writers meets the first Thursday of every month at the museum, 6 to 8 in their education room.
In the morning or PM?
6 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
I would prefer 6 to 8 a.m., but nobody else would. I'm a morning person. What else do you want to know? My work is available at the Hagen Museum, as are all the chapbooks. I have 2 novels out now. One was available on Amazon. They're both available I'm done.
No, but
They
the
get
last thing I want to do is to me to contact you and they're interested in poetry. How did they get a hold of you? That's the last thing I want to ask.
You can email me at rreinarts22@comcast.net, and I will put you on my mailing list.
Perfect. Any Josh, any you want to say that for the people that are guests or anything like that, the last show?
Yeah, for sure. My band, 2 of my bands. One of my bands, West French Forever. You can you just look it up on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. My Instagram is poison.bites. I'm always around Stockton. If not, I'm here every Thursday nights. So.
All right. Okay. Thank you for thank my guest for coming. I hope we can have more in depth talking and poets coming up next time. I'm going to invite them to come again. And thanks Betty for doing the board. And thank you for have a wonderful Tuesday afternoon of watching the Doug Vigil Show. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Alrighty.